That night, my life changed forever. I was coming home after canceling a trip. The plane had taken off without me, a problem with my passport, something absurd, but it forced me to return. I was tired, annoyed, with my suitcases still in the trunk of the car. I opened the front door carefully. I didn't want to wake anyone. It was almost midnight. Then I heard him, the voice of my son, Austin, coming from the living room. He was on the phone. He was speaking loudly, excitedly, almost euphoric. I stood still in the hallway. Something in his tone stopped me, and then he said something that froze the blood in my veins. Mom's plane went down. The 18 million is ours. Finally, my heart stopped beating. I stood paralyzed behind the living room door, keys still in my hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I heard laughter. I heard voices. I heard my own son celebrating my death. My name is Claire Miller. I am 62 years old, and what I am about to tell you is something I never imagined living through, because that night my son didn't know I was alive, and I didn't know that my entire life had been a lie. I still have in my hand the rosary my mother gave me before she died. I squeezed it that night with such force that the beads dug into my palm. That rosary accompanied me in every moment of what came next. But before I tell you what I did when I entered that living room, let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand why my son wished for my death, you need to know who I was, and above all, who I thought he was. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. Austin was born on an October morning. Try remember perfectly the smell of cinnamon and pumpkin spice coming through the hospital window. It was autumn, and the bakeries all over town were already making seasonal treats. My husband Frank wept with emotion. He kissed my forehead and told me, "Claire, you've given us the greatest gift. This boy is going to be our joy," and he was, for many, many years. He was. Austin was a smiling child, one of those who hugs you tight and says, "I love you, Mom," without anyone asking him to. He loved helping me in the kitchen. When I made apple pies, he would sit on the little wooden stool and pass me the apples one by one. "Mommy, when can I make pies all by myself?" "When you're big, my love. But don't rush. I'll always be here to teach you." How ironic that phrase sounds now. We lived in a large house in Greenwich, Connecticut. Frank had inherited a textile import business that grew tremendously. We were a well-to-do family, yes, but never flashy. Frank always said, "Money is kept quiet, Claire, and spent with purpose." Austin attended a private prep school, got good grades, and played soccer on Saturdays. On Sundays, we all went to Mass at St. Mary's and then had brunch eggs Benedict at the same country club we always went to. Frank died when Austin was 23. It was a massive heart attack, without warning, without a goodbye. One morning he was reading the Wall Street Journal with his coffee, and by noon, he was gone. I remember Austin held me so tight at the funeral that I felt like I would break. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm going to take care of you. I'm never going to leave you alone." And I believed him. After Frank's death, we discovered he had left everything in order. A clear will, a well-managed fortune, properties, investments, offshore accounts. The lawyer explained everything to us in his office. Austin and I inherited equal shares, but since Frank knew I didn't understand much about business, he named Austin as the temporary executor and administrator of everything. "It's only until you feel ready, Mom. I'm just going to make sure nothing gets lost. This is yours. It's ours." I signed the papers without hesitation because he was my son, because I trusted him just as I had trusted his father. The first few years were good. Austin moved back into the house. He said he didn't want to leave me alone. We hired Martha, a wonderful woman who had been with us for years, who cooked deliciously and became my daily companion. Austin left early to check on the business and returned late. Sometimes he arrived tired, stressed. I would make him chamomile tea and warm up his dinner. "Everything okay, son?" "Yes, Mom, just a lot of work, but don't worry, everything is under control." But over time, something changed. Austin started arriving later and later. He stopped having dinner with me. He stopped asking how my day had been. When I asked him about the business, he got tense. "Mom, I already told you everything is fine. Why do you ask so much?" One day I asked to see the bank statements. I just wanted to understand. I just wanted to know if we were okay. He got upset. "Don't you trust me? After everything I do for you?" He made me feel guilty. He made me feel old, foolish, a burden, so I stopped asking. Months passed. Austin was hardly ever home. When we did coincide, he was on his phone, always on his phone. One afternoon, while he was showering, I heard his cell phone vibrate in the living room. It vibrated so many times that I approached it without thinking. On the screen was a message. "Did you talk to the lawyer yet? We need to speed this up." I didn't recognize the number. I didn't understand the message. But something inside me, something very small, very fragile, began to crack. That night, while eating dinner alone, I looked at my mother's rosary that I always kept in the dining room drawer. I took it in my hands and, without knowing why, I prayed. I prayed that what I was feeling was just the paranoia of an older woman. I prayed that my son was still my son. But prayers aren't always answered how we want. Sometimes God answers us by showing us the truth, and the truth, when it arrives, hurts more than any lie. 2 weeks after that message, I received an unexpected call. It was an invitation to give a speech in Chicago, an event for women entrepreneurs. It surprised me because I had never been a businesswoman in the active sense, but the organizer insisted, "Mrs. Miller, your story is inspiring. A woman who maintained her husband's legacy. We want you to share your experience." I said yes. Austin, for the first time in months, seemed relieved. "That's great, Mom. It'll be good for you to get out a bit." "When is it?" "Friday. I leave in the afternoon and return Sunday." "Perfect. Too perfect." On Thursday night, I packed my suitcase. Martha helped me iron 2 dresses. I felt nervous, but also excited. It had been so long since I'd left Connecticut. On Friday morning, Austin had already left when I went down for breakfast. Martha drove me to the airport. I passed through security. I arrived at the gate. I sat down with my purse and my rosary in hand. Then I heard my name over the loudspeaker. "Mrs. Claire Miller, please report to the customer service desk." I stood up, confused. A TSA agent was waiting for me with a serious expression. "Ma'am, there is a problem with your passport. You cannot board." "What? But I renewed it 6 months ago." "There is an inconsistency in the system." "I'm sorry, but you must resolve it before traveling." I tried to explain. I tried to call the event organizer, but there was nothing to be done. The plane took off without me. I returned home defeated, with my suitcases and the shame of having failed. It was almost 12 a.m. when I opened the door to my house. Everything was dark, silent. I left the suitcases in the entryway, took off my shoes, and then I heard it. Austin's voice, loud, clear, filled with an emotion I had never heard from him. It was coming from the living room. I approached slowly, without making a sound, and heard the words that would change everything. "Mom's plane went down. The 18 million is ours, finally." I stood paralyzed. My mother's rosary slipped from my hands and hit the hardwood floor. It made a soft noise, but in that silence, it sounded like thunder. While I tell all this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. The rosary fell to the floor, and in that moment, I felt like I was falling too, not physically, but inside, as if everything that had sustained my life for 62 years crumbled in a single instant. I stood motionless, barely breathing, my back pressed against the hallway wall, and kept listening. Yes, they confirmed it. The plane crashed near Chicago. No survivors. It was on the news an hour ago. It was Austin's voice, my son, my only son. But he didn't sound like the boy who hugged me at his father's funeral. He didn't sound like the young man who promised to take care of me. He sounded euphoric. "Listen to me closely, Madison. Tomorrow I'm going to the lawyer. Since I'm the administrator of everything, there won't be a problem. The 18 million goes straight to my name. The properties too. Everything. Madison." I had heard that name before. Austin had introduced her to me 6 months ago. A young woman, blonde, with long manicured nails and a cold smile. He said she was a business associate. I made her coffee. She barely touched it. Now I understood why. What if they investigate? What if someone asks? That was Madison's voice. She sounded anxious, but also calculating. They won't ask anything. My mother was 62 years old, traveling alone, an accident. It's that simple. Besides, the will has been in my favor since my father died. She never bothered to change it. She never knew anything about finances. They laughed. Both of them. They laughed at me. I felt a pain in my chest so strong I thought I was having a heart attack, like the one that killed Frank. I thought, I'm going to die here. This is where it ends. But I didn't die. Something inside me broke. Yes, but I didn't die. I bent down very slowly. I picked up the rosary from the floor, squeezed it so hard the beads dug into my skin. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to enter that living room. Not yet. Because if I went in, if I confronted him in that instant, my pain would turn into screams, tears, despair, and I needed something more than pain. I needed clarity. I moved backward, step by step, like a thief in my own home. I picked up my suitcases from the entryway. I opened the front door very slowly, millimeter by millimeter, praying it wouldn't squeak. It didn't. I went out, closed the door without a sound, and walked to my car as if I were in a dream. I don't know how long I drove. I only know I ended up in the parking lot of a church, the same church where Austin made his first communion, where Frank and I got married. It was almost 0 inches the morning. The church was closed, but the courtyard was illuminated by a dim light. I sat on a stone bench, and there, alone, surrounded by silence, I began to understand. The last 2 years started to make sense, like when you put together a puzzle and suddenly all the pieces fit. The times Austin pushed me away from conversations with the lawyer. Mom, you rest, I'll handle it. The papers he asked me to sign without explaining well what they were. It's just a formality, Mom, trust me. The calls he cut short when I entered the room, the sudden trips, the coldness, the distance, it had all been part of a plan. And I had been the fool who signed, who trusted, who stepped aside because I didn't understand business. I had become an obstacle, and obstacles are eliminated. The rosary was still in my hands. I looked at it under the yellow light of the courtyard. It was an old, worn rosary. My mother gave it to me on my wedding day. Claire, when things get difficult, pray. Not for miracles, pray for strength. So I prayed. I didn't pray for Austin to change. I didn't pray to wake up from a nightmare. I prayed for the strength to do what I had to do. When the sun began to rise, I returned home. It was almost 0 inches the morning. Martha had just arrived. She was in the kitchen making coffee. She saw me enter with the suitcases and was surprised. Mrs. Miller, what happened? I thought you weren't coming back until Sunday. There was a problem with the flight, Martha. I came back last night, but it was very late and I didn't want to disturb anyone. I slept at a friend's house. I lied for the first time in my life. I lied with ease. Martha nodded and continued making breakfast. I went up to my room, took a long shower, and dressed slowly. When I went down, Austin was in the dining room. He had his laptop open. He was watching something on the screen. The news. Plane crashes near Chicago. No survivors. He saw me and froze. The cup of coffee he had in his hand began to tremble. His face. I will never forget his face. He went completely pale. He opened his mouth. He tried to say something, but no sound came out. I looked at him intently, and with the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Good morning, Austin. Did you sleep well?" He stood up so fast the chair fell backward onto the floor. He took 2 steps back and then he fainted. He fell to the floor like a rag doll. Martha came running out of the kitchen screaming, Ma'am, help me." But I didn't move. I stood there, looking at him on the floor, and I felt nothing. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel the motherly impulse to run and help him. I only felt a huge void, because the man lying on my dining room floor was no longer my son. He was a stranger who had celebrated my death. Martha splashed water on his face, patted his cheeks. I called the ambulance, but with a calmness that surprised even me. Austin woke up before the paramedics arrived. He opened his eyes, saw me, and started to cry. Mom, I thought you. The plane." "Yes, Austin, I know. You thought I had died." He went silent. The paramedics arrived, checked Austin, said he was fine, that it had been a fainting spell due to shock. It's normal. Seeing someone you thought was dead can cause a strong physical reaction. How ironic. When they left, Austin stayed sitting on the living room sofa. I sat across from him. I didn't say anything, neither did he. The silence lasted several minutes until he finally spoke. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what, Austin?" He got nervous. He started to stammer. It's just that last night I saw the news about the plane and I thought you were on that flight and I got scared. I called Madison because I was desperate and you celebrated." He went mute. "I heard you, Austin. I heard everything. I didn't go to the airport last night. I came back early. I was in the hallway." His face changed. The crying disappeared. And for a moment, just for a moment, I saw something in his eyes, something cold, something that scared me. But then it changed again. He went back to being the scared child, the repentant son. "Mom, no, it's not what you think." I was confused. "Madison and I have financial problems and I thought horrible things, but I never wanted anything bad to happen to you for real. I swear." He was lying. I knew it. But I didn't have proof. I had nothing more than what I had heard one night, so I did something I never thought I would do. I smiled. "It's okay, son. I understand. You were stressed. Sometimes we think things we don't feel." "Don't worry." Austin looked at me confused, as if he didn't understand. "No, you're not angry. I'm tired, Austin. I just want to rest." I got up, went up to my room, and for the first time in 2 years, I locked the door. I sat on the bed, took the rosary out of my pocket, and thought, if he wants the money, he's going to have to keep waiting, because I wasn't going to die, not yet. And when I died, it wouldn't be with his name in my will. But first I needed to know how much damage he had already done to me. The following days were strange. Austin tried to be nice to me, too nice. He brought me breakfast in bed, asked me how I had slept. He invited me out. I accepted everything. I smiled, acted as if nothing had happened, but inside I was investigating. I called Frank's lawyer, asked for an appointment, told him I wanted to review the inheritance documents. Austin found out and went pale. "What for, Mom? Everything is in order. I just want to understand properly, nothing more." The lawyer received me in his office a week later, and what I discovered left me breathless. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you? What would you have done in my place? The lawyer's office smelled of old books and cold coffee. Attorney Robert Bob Morris had been Frank's friend. He knew him since college. He was a serious man, immaculate suit, hands always clasped on the desk. He received me with a sad smile. "Claire, it's been so long. How have you been?" "Fine, Bob. Well, more or less." I sat in front of him, took the rosary out of my purse, and put it on my lap. I needed to feel it close. "I want to review Frank's inheritance documents. All of them. I want to know exactly what I have, where it is, and who has access." Bob looked at me attentively. Something in my tone must have alerted him. "Claire, did something happen?" I didn't know what to say. "How do you explain to someone that your son celebrated your death? How do you tell them you've spent a week sleeping with your door locked in your own house?" So I just said, "I need to know the truth." Bob nodded slowly, opened a metal filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. "I'm going to be honest with you, Claire. 6 months ago, Austin came to see me. He asked me to explain certain moves he could make with the accounts. I warned him that he needed your authorization for everything. He said he had it. My heart started to race. "What kind of moves?" Bob opened the folder and pulled out several documents. He placed them in front of me one by one. 3 properties that Frank left in your name were transferred to Austin's name. Here are the signatures, yours and his. I looked at the papers. It was my signature, but I didn't remember signing that. When did I sign this? A year and a half ago. You don't remember? I tried to remember. A year and a half ago. Austin had taken me to sign some papers. He said they were tax updates. I signed without reading. I trusted him. Continue, Bob. He pulled out another document. Significant withdrawals were also made from the investment accounts. Large sums, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. My mouth went dry. How much in total? Bob checked a sheet with numbers. In the last 2 years, approximately $4 million. I felt the room spinning. And I authorized that? According to bank records, yes. Austin presented documents with your signature for every withdrawal, but I never knew about that. Bob closed the folder, took off his glasses, and looked at me with something that looked like compassion and also guilt. Claire, when Frank died, he asked me to look after you, to make sure no one took advantage. But you signed a power of attorney giving Austin almost total control. I warned you at the time. I told you it was too much power for one person, but you insisted. He was right. I remembered that day. 2 months after Frank's funeral, Austin told me we needed to organize everything so I wouldn't have to worry about anything. Mom, trust me. I'm going to take care of everything just like Dad would have. And I signed because he was my son, because I had just lost my husband and didn't have the strength for anything, because I wanted to believe I wasn't alone. Bob, how much is left? He checked another document. Of the 18 million Frank left, approximately 11 million remain. That's not counting the properties. 11 million. 7 million had disappeared, and I hadn't even noticed. Is there anything I can do? Bob sighed. Legally, it's complicated. You signed authorizations. Austin is your son and the legal administrator. Unless you can prove there was fraud or manipulation, there isn't much that can be done without a long and painful trial. And if I change the will? That you can do at any moment. But he doesn't have to know until you're gone. I nodded slowly. I want to change it. But I don't want Austin to find out. It can be done like that. Yes, we can prepare a new will and keep it in my files. No one will know until it is executed. Then do it. Bob looked at me with concern. Claire, are you sure you're okay? Do you need help? Protection? I shook my head. I'm fine. I just need time. I lied again. I wasn't fine. I was destroyed, but I couldn't show weakness. Not yet. When I left that office, I walked through the streets of downtown without aim. I ended up in a park. I sat on a bench under an oak tree, and there, in that park, I cried. I cried for the son I had lost, not to death, but to greed. I cried for the years I had spent raising him, loving him, sacrificing for him. I cried because it had all been in vain. When I returned home, it was already dark. Austin was in the living room. He was waiting for me. Mom, where were you? I was worried. I went to the doctor. Routine checkup. Everything's fine. Yes, everything's fine. He stood looking at me, trying to read something in my face. I kept my gaze calm, almost empty. I'm going to eat something and go to sleep. I'm tired. Okay, Mom. Rest. I went up to my room, locked the door, and then made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him, not directly, because if I did, he would look for a way to manipulate me again, to convince me, to make me doubt, and I couldn't afford to doubt anymore. So I was going to do something different. I was going to act as if nothing had happened. I was going to be the trusting mother, the naive widow, and in the meantime, I was going to protect what was left. The following days were an act. I smiled, prepared breakfast, asked about his day. How is business, son? Good, Mom. Everything is going well. I'm glad. Your father would be proud. Every word was a lie, but a necessary lie. At night, when Austin slept, I went down to his home office, reviewed papers, searched for documents, took photos with my cell phone. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew I needed proof. I found receipts from expensive restaurants, invoices for trips, purchases of designer clothes all paid for with family accounts. I found printed messages from Madison. Did you talk to the lawyer yet? We need that money before the end of the year. Don't worry. My mother suspects nothing. She's old. She doesn't understand. Old. That word hurt me more than any other. To him, I was just a hindrance, a foolish old woman standing in the way of his fortune. I took photos of everything, saved them in an email I sent to my own account, just in case. One night, while searching the drawers of his desk, I found something that froze my blood. A manila envelope. Inside was a document, a life insurance policy in my name for $5 million. Beneficiary, Austin Miller. Date of issue, 3 months ago. I looked at it for several minutes without understanding. I had never signed a life insurance policy, but there was my signature, and then I understood. Austin didn't just want me to die, he was waiting for me to die and had put a price on my death, millions of dollars. I put the document back, took photos, and returned to my room with my legs shaking. I sat on the bed, took out the rosary, and prayed. I prayed like I had never prayed, not for miracles, not for Austin to change. I prayed not to lose my sanity. I prayed to have the strength to keep pretending, because now I knew something terrible. If Austin discovered that I knew the truth, my life was in real danger. So I did the only thing I could do: keep being the perfect mother, the naive widow, the woman who suspected nothing. A week later, Austin invited me to dinner. "Mom, I want us to go out, you and me, like before. It's been a long time since we spent time together." Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to scream the truth at him, wanted to ask him how he could look me in the eyes after everything. But the other part, the part that was learning to survive, just smiled. "I would love to, son." We went to a restaurant in Greenwich, one of those with white tablecloths and candles on the tables. Austin ordered wine. "A toast to us, Mom. To family, to family." The wine tasted bitter. During dinner, Austin talked about his plans, trips he wanted to take, investments he was considering. I nodded, smiled, asked questions, and inside I counted the days because Bob Morris had called me that morning. "Claire, the new will is ready. When do you want to come sign it?" "Soon, Bob. Very soon." While Austin told me about a trip to Europe he wanted to take with the investment money, I thought, enjoy this moment, son, because it's the last one where you think you've won. That night, when we returned home, Austin kissed me on the forehead. "I love you, Mom." And for the first time in my life, I didn't believe him. While I tell all this, I wonder where you are listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. There are days when life gives you signs, small, subtle, like cracks in a wall that seem insignificant, until one day the whole house collapses. I started seeing those cracks everywhere. 2 weeks after the dinner in Greenwich, Martha called me to my room. It was mid-morning. Austin had left early, as always. "Mrs. Miller, forgive me for bothering you, but I found this while cleaning Mr. Austin's office." She handed me a crumpled paper. It looked like it had been in the trash can. I unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note. A woman's handwriting. "Sweet perfume. Too sweet. My love, I can't take it anymore. I need this to end soon. I've been waiting 2 years. You promised me that when she was gone, we could be together without hiding. I love you. M. Madison." Martha looked at me with concern. "Ma'am, I didn't want to interfere, but it seemed strange. And then I remembered the times that young lady comes to the house when you aren't here." I felt a chill. "How many times has she come, Martha?" "Many, ma'am. Sometimes they stay in the living room. Sometimes they go up to Mr. Austin's room." I remained silent. Martha lowered her gaze. "Forgive me, ma'am. I didn't want to hide anything from you, but Mr. Austin told me that you already knew that she was his fiancée and they would be getting married soon. Getting married with his dead mother's money. Thank you, Martha. You did well to tell me." Martha left the room. I stayed with the note in my hands. When she was gone, not when I was ready to hand over the money, not when I decided to retire, when I was gone, that is, when I died. I kept the note in the same envelope where I had the photos of the insurance policy and the documents I had found. The evidence was piling up, but I still didn't know what to do with it. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had never done. Follow my own son. Austin told me he had a business meeting in Manhattan. He would leave at 3 a.m. and return late. At 3:15, I took my car and followed him. I kept a safe distance. Thank God, the traffic on I-95 is so chaotic that it's easy to go unnoticed. Austin didn't go to the financial district. He went to a residential area in Tribeca, a modern building with a doorman and private security. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw Madison come out of the building. She wore a tight dress and high heels. She looked happy. Austin got out of the car, hugged her, kissed her, not like you kiss a business associate. He kissed her like you kiss someone with whom you share a life, with whom you make plans, with whom you count on a future that I was apparently preventing. They entered the building together. I stayed there in the car for 2 hours. When they came out, they were laughing. Austin carried a bottle of wine in his hand. They said goodbye with another long kiss, and then Austin took his cell phone and made a call. I rolled down the window to try to listen. Although I was far away, I only managed to hear fragments. "Yes, today. The lawyer said we can speed it up. I just need her to sign one last document. One last document." I felt my heart jumping out of my chest. What document? For what? When Austin left, I wrote down the address of the building on a piece of paper. The building name, apartment 804. I returned home before him. Martha was preparing dinner. "Ma'am, do you feel okay? You look pale." "I'm fine, Martha. Just tired." I went up to my room, closed the door, and then did something I never thought I would do. I called a private investigator. I found one on the internet, a man named James Sullivan. His website said, "Absolute discretion, family and corporate investigations." I called him from my cell phone. He answered on the second ring. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you? I didn't even know where to start. I need you to investigate someone." "Who?" I swallowed hard. "My son." There was a brief silence. "I understand. Can you give me more details?" I told him everything, or almost everything. I told him about the missing money, Madison, the life insurance, the call I heard the night my plane supposedly crashed. The investigator listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Ma'am, what you are describing is potentially grave. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Because what we find might hurt. It already hurts. I want to know the whole truth." "Okay. I need you to email me all the information you have. Full names, addresses, phone numbers, photos of documents, everything you've gathered. How much time do you need?" "Give me a week, maybe 2. "How much does it cost?" He gave me a price. It was high, but the money didn't matter to me anymore. "Fine, do it." That night, Austin arrived late. He smelled of perfume, the same perfume from the note. He found me in the living room knitting a sweater, something I had started doing to keep my hands busy and my mind calm. "Hi, Mom. Did you eat?" "Yes, son. Martha left me something." "Perfect." He sat next to me, watched me knit. "Who is that sweater for?" "For you. Winter is coming." He went silent. For a moment I saw something on his face, something like guilt, but it disappeared quickly. "Thanks, Mom. Always so thoughtful. You're my son. It's what I do." He kissed me on the cheek and went up to his room. I kept knitting, stitch after stitch, as if every stitch were a prayer, as if knitting that sweater could bring back the boy he once was. But I knew it wasn't possible. The following days were silent torture. "Austin brought me papers to sign minor paperwork," he said. I reviewed them more carefully than ever. Some were legitimate, others not so much. "Mom, this is just to renew a building permit for the house in the Hamptons." I read the document. It mentioned nothing about building permits. It was an authorization to transfer the entire property to his name. "Austin, this says I am deeding the property, not renewing permits." He got tense. "Oh, yeah, it's a legal technicality. It has to do with taxes." "Don't worry, I'm not going to sign this." His face changed. For a second, I saw anger. "Why not? Don't you trust me anymore?" "It's not that, son. I just want to understand properly before signing." "But Mom, I've taken care of you all this time. I've managed everything, and now you come out with this?" "I just want to read it calmly. Maybe take it to Bob Morris so he can explain it to me." Austin stood up abruptly. "You know what? Forget it. It doesn't matter. I'll solve it another way." He left the living room stomping his feet. I stayed with the document in my hands and knew I had made a mistake. I had shown him I was doubting, that I was waking up, and that was dangerous. That night I heard voices in Austin's room. He was on the phone. He spoke in a low but angry voice. I went up the stairs slowly. I stayed close to his door. "No, Madison. She didn't sign." She started asking questions. Yes, I know. This is getting complicated. I can't force her. If she suspects anything, she can go to the lawyer and change everything. We need to be smarter. Silence. Listening. "No. We can't wait that long. We've been at this for 2 years. I'm sick of it too. Look, let me think. There has to be another way. Another way too." "What?" I went down the stairs without making a noise. My heart was beating so fast I felt it was going to give me away. I entered my room, locked it, and took my mother's rosary in my hands. "Mom, if you are watching me from wherever you are, help me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this." The next day, I received a call from the investigator. "James Sullivan. Mrs. Miller. I found something. We need to meet. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "What did you find?" I prefer to tell you in person. I said yes. At 4 p.m., I was sitting in his office, a small office with a desk full of papers and an old computer. James was a man of about 50 with a serious face but kind eyes. He placed a folder in front of me. "Ma'am, what I'm going to show you isn't easy. Are you prepared?" I nodded. He opened the folder. The first photo was of Austin and Madison entering a bank. The second was of both leaving a notary's office. The third was of a document, a marriage certificate. Austin and Madison were married. Since 6 months ago, I felt the floor open beneath my feet. Married? Yes, ma'am. They got married in a civil ceremony at City Hall in New York. Discreet. No guests. But he never told me anything. James pulled out more documents. There's more. Madison has significant debts. 3 credit cards maxed out, a personal loan of $200,000 she hasn't paid, and her family, well, her family has legal problems. Madison's father is being investigated for fraud. He showed me newspaper clippings. Articles about Madison's father involved in real estate scams. They need money, ma'am. A lot of money, and fast. James pulled out another photo. This one broke me completely. It was Austin and Madison at a car dealership looking at a Porsche. The salesman was showing them papers. This photo is from 3 days ago. They are buying a luxury car. Price, $140,000. It's going to be paid from an account in your name. I couldn't breathe. There's more. James nodded with sadness. Ma'am, I found something more serious. Your son has been researching options to commit you to a nursing home. Expensive places, yes, but memory care facilities for advanced dementia. What? Apparently he is building a case to declare that you are not in your right mind, that you need special care. If he achieves that, he would have total legal control over everything without needing your signature. I went mute. Everything made sense now. The papers he brought me to sign, the insistence, the rush. And when I started to resist, he changed strategy. Declare me incompetent, lock me up, and keep everything. Ma'am, there is one more thing you should know. James pulled out one last document. Your son took out a loan using one of your properties as collateral, a loan of $1.5 million. If he doesn't pay it in the next 3 months, he loses the property. Which property? The house in the Hamptons. The one your husband bought for you when you got married. The house where Frank and I spent our honeymoon. The house where Austin learned to swim in the pool. The house full of memories. Austin had mortgaged it and was about to lose it. I closed the folder. I couldn't see anymore. What should I do, Mr. Sullivan? That depends on you, ma'am. I just gave you the information, but if you ask my opinion, you need to protect yourself legally and perhaps physically. Physically, when people are desperate, they can do unpredictable things, and your son is very desperate. I left that office like a ghost. I drove through the city aimlessly. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, amidst the traffic, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep pretending. I wasn't going to wait anymore, because if I waited longer, maybe there wouldn't be time. I had to act, and I had to do it soon. That night I called Bob Morris. Bob, I need to see you tomorrow early. And I need you to prepare something more than a will. What do you need, Claire? I need to save what's left, and I need my son never to touch a single cent of what was Frank's again. Understood. See you tomorrow at 9. I hung up the phone, looked at the rosary on my nightstand, and whispered, Forgive me, son, but this is over. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you, what would you have done in my place? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, sitting on the bed with the folder the investigator had given me on my lap. I opened every document, read every photo, reviewed every detail. Austin married in secret, debts, plans to commit me, the Hamptons house mortgaged, $7 million missing. And I, who had signed everything, who had trusted, who had ceded control of my life because I believed my son would take care of me. The whole truth was in front of me, clear, brutal, undeniable. But what hurt me most wasn't the money, it was the deception. It was knowing that every hug had been calculated, every I love you, Mom, had been a lie, every gesture of concern had been theater. Because to him, I was just an obstacle between his ambition and his new life. I looked at the clock. It was 5:00 the morning. In 4 hours I had the appointment with Bob Morris. I got up, took a long shower, dressed carefully a navy blue suit Frank had given me years ago, pearl earrings, hair tied back. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't the naive widow anymore. The trusting mother was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned to survive. I took my mother's rosary and put it in my purse, along with the investigator's folder. I went down the stairs. Martha was in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning, ma'am. Going out?" "Yes, Martha, I have an important appointment." "Does Mr. Austin know?" "No. And don't tell him I went out. If he asks, tell him I went to the doctor." Martha nodded. She had learned not to ask questions. I left the house before Austin woke up. The morning traffic in the city was dense. The streets were full of people going to work, school buses, life continuing normal, daily, while mine crumbled and rebuilt itself at the same time. I arrived at Bob Morris's office at 8:30. I was the first to arrive. The secretary offered me coffee. I accepted, but I didn't touch it. I just needed to have something in my hands. At 9 sharp, Bob received me in his office. He closed the door, sat in front of me. "Claire, tell me what happened." I took out the folder, put it on his desk. I hired a private investigator and discovered the whole truth. Bob opened the folder, reviewing each document in silence. When he finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "My God, Claire, this is worse than I imagined." "I know. Does Austin know that you know?" "No. I've been acting like nothing happened, but I can't keep going like this. I need to act now before it's too late." Bob nodded. "Okay. We're going to do the following. First, we are going to completely change your will. Austin receives nothing, not a dime. Second, we are going to revoke all the powers of attorney you gave him. You are going to recover total control of your accounts, properties, and investments. Third, we are going to initiate a forensic audit of everything he has managed in these 2 years. We need to document every movement, every withdrawal, every transaction. And the Hamptons house, the one he mortgaged. We're going to pay it off, settle that debt before you lose it, and then transfer the property to a trust in your name. An irrevocable trust that Austin cannot touch. How long does all that take? If we hurry, 2 weeks, maybe 3, and if in that time Austin tries something?" Bob looked at me seriously. "That's why I'm also going to suggest something else, something you might not like." "What?" "That you leave your house temporarily while this is resolved. It's for your safety." "I'm not leaving my house. It's my home. Frank and I built it together. Claire, I understand, but your son is desperate, and desperate people can do unpredictable things." "I know," the investigator told me, "but I'm not going to run from my own house. I won't give him that satisfaction." Bob sighed. "All right, but at least be careful. Don't eat or drink anything he prepares. Don't stay alone with him in isolated places. And if you feel something is wrong, call me at any hour." I nodded. We spent the next 3 hours working. I signed documents, revoked powers. We drafted a completely new will. All the money that remained, all the properties, all the investments were to be donated to charities, orphanages, retirement homes for the indigent, anywhere the money could do good except to Austin. "Are you completely sure about this, Claire?" "There is no going back. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." When we finished, Bob put all the documents in a safe. "No one will know about this until it's necessary." "Thank you, Bob. Claire, I'm very sorry you are going through this. Frank was my friend, and I know he would be proud of the brave woman you are." I left that office feeling something strange. It wasn't relief, it wasn't satisfaction, it was peace. A cold, sad peace, but peace nonetheless, because for the first time in a long time I had taken control of my life. I drove back home, but first I made a detour. I went to the church, the same one where I had sat that night after hearing Austin celebrate my death. It was noon. The church was almost empty. Just an older woman praying in the first row and a priest arranging flowers on the altar. I sat in a back pew, took the rosary out of my purse, and prayed. I prayed for my son, for the boy he once was. I prayed for Frank, for his soul, for his legacy. And I prayed for me, for the strength to do what was coming, because I knew the hardest part hadn't arrived yet. I knew I would have to look him in the eyes, confront him, and tell him the truth. When I finished praying, I stayed sitting in silence, looking at the altar, looking at the crucified Christ, and thought, even Jesus was betrayed by someone he loved. Maybe suffering was part of life, inevitable, universal, but so was resurrection. I left the church with the sun beating down. The sky was clear, an intense blue. Everything looked so normal, so calm, as if the world didn't know my life had just changed forever. I arrived home at 3:00 the afternoon. Austin was in the living room with his laptop, talking on the phone. When he saw me, he hung up quickly. "Mom, where were you? I looked for you this morning. I went to the doctor for some tests. Everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine." He looked at me suspiciously, as if trying to read something on my face. "Sure? You look different. Just tired." I went up to my room without saying more. I closed the door, sat on the bed, and then saw something I hadn't seen before. On my nightstand, next to the lamp, was a bottle of pills. It wasn't mine. I picked it up. Read the label. Clonazepam. Prescribed for anxiety and sleep disorders. Where had this come from? I had never taken clonazepam. It had never been prescribed to me. I opened the drawer of the nightstand, checked. There were more pills, a complete blister pack hidden under some magazines. I felt a chill. Austin had put those pills there. For what? And then I remembered something. 3 days ago, Austin had made me tea. He insisted I take it. "It'll help you sleep better, Mom. You look very stressed." I drank it, and that night I slept like never before. A deep, heavy sleep, from which I woke up confused and with a headache. He had been drugging me. The thought turned my stomach. I took the bottle of pills and put it in my purse. Evidence. I went down the stairs. Austin was in the kitchen. "Mom, do you want me to make you something for dinner?" "No, thanks. I'm not hungry. But you should eat something." "Look, I let Martha make vegetable soup, your favorite." "No, really. I'm fine," Austin insisted. "At least a tea. I'll make you one." "No, Austin. I told you no." My voice came out stronger than I intended. Austin stood still. He looked at me intently. "Is something wrong, Mom?" "No, nothing. Because lately you've been weird, distant, or suspicious." The air became tense. "Why would I be suspicious?" Austin approached me. His voice changed. It became cold. "I don't know, Mom. You tell me. Is there something you want to tell me?" I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that once looked at me with love, and in that moment, I knew that he knew. He didn't know exactly what or how much, but he knew something had changed. "No, son. I have nothing to tell you." "Sure? Sure." We stood looking in silence, like two strangers measuring strength, until Martha entered with grocery bags and broke the moment. Austin smiled. That fake smile he had perfected. "Well, if you need anything, I'm here." He went up the stairs. I stayed in the kitchen trembling. Martha looked at me worried. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "Yes, Martha, I'm fine." But I wasn't, because I had just understood something terrible, Austin suspected, and if he suspected, he was going to act. And I didn't know how much time I had before he did something drastic. That night, I didn't eat anything that came from the kitchen. I went out to buy a sandwich at a convenience store. I locked my door, put a chair against the knob just in case, and slept with my cell phone in hand with Bob Morris's number on speed dial, because I no longer knew what my son was capable of, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The following days were a game of cat and mouse. Austin watched me. I watched him. Neither said anything, but we both knew something was cooking. One morning I went down for breakfast and found an envelope on the dining table. I opened it. It was a brochure for a nursing home, Sunset Villa, specialized care for seniors with special needs. There was a handwritten note. "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it would be good for you to consider a place like this. With nurses 24 hours, activities, company, you could be happier. Think about it. With love, Austin." I crumpled the paper. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning. If you don't cooperate, I lock you up. But what Austin didn't know was that I was already ahead of him. I called Bob Morris. "Bob, I found pills in my room and a brochure for nursing homes. He is preparing for something." "Claire, the legal papers are ready. We are just missing the bank signatures to transfer everything. Give me 3 more days." "Just 3 days?" And if I don't have 3 days, then you have to get out of that house. Now, I hung up the phone, looked around. My house, my home, the place where I had raised my son, where I had loved my husband, where I had built my life, and I thought, no, I'm not going to run. I've run enough. That afternoon I made another decision. I decided I wasn't going to wait for Austin to act anymore. I was going to act first, and the moment had arrived, because that night I was going to confront him. I was going to tell him the truth that I knew everything, that he had lost, and that he would never, ever touch a single cent of what was his father's again. I ate dinner alone in my room, a sandwich I bought on the street, bottled water I opened myself. I put on the same blue suit I used to go to the lawyer. I combed my hair, applied light makeup, took my mother's rosary and squeezed it between my hands. Mom, give me strength because tonight everything ends. I went down the stairs at 8 p.m. Austin was in the living room watching TV. I sat across from him and with the calmest voice I could, I said, "Austin, we need to talk." He turned off the TV, looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that froze my blood, fear. The silence between us lasted several seconds. Austin looked at me. I looked at him. In the living room, only the ticking of the grandfather clock Frank had bought on a trip to Europe could be heard. That clock that had marked so many moments of our family life now marked the end. Talk about what, Mom? His voice sounded cautious, like someone walking on thin ice. I took a deep breath. I squeezed the rosary I carried in my jacket pocket. About the truth, Austin. About the whole truth. He settled into the sofa, crossed his legs. He tried to look relaxed, but his hands shook slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I looked straight into his eyes without blinking. I know you are married to Madison. I know you've been married for 6 months in secret. I know she has enormous debts. I know her family has legal problems. I know you mortgaged the Hamptons house without telling me. I know $7 million have disappeared in 2 years. I know you bought a life insurance policy in my name for $5 million. I know you wanted to commit me to a nursing home declaring me incompetent. And I know, my voice broke a little, but I continued. And I know that the night you thought my plane had crashed, you celebrated. You celebrated my death, Austin. I heard you. I was in the hallway. I heard every word. The color disappeared from his face. He went completely pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried to speak, but nothing came out. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he said, "Mom, I didn't." I raised my hand. I don't want excuses. I don't want lies. No more. I just want you to tell me one thing. Why? Why did you do this to me? Austin lowered his gaze. His hands gripped the armrests of the sofa. When he looked at me again, his eyes were wet. Because it was never enough. What? Everything Dad left me, everything we had, it was never enough. He got up from the sofa, started pacing the room. The words came out now like a torrent. My whole life I lived in his shadow. Your father did this. Your father built that. Your father was a brilliant businessman, always him. And me? I was just the son who had to live up to him. Do you know what that feels like, Austin? No, let me finish. His voice rose in tone. I had never seen him like this. Uncontrolled, desperate. When Dad died, everyone expected me to be like him. To manage the business, to take care of the money, to be the man of the family. But I'm not him, Mom. I never was. And the business. The business started to fail. I made bad investments. I lost money. A lot of money. And why didn't you tell me? I would have understood. We would have sought help together. Austin let out a bitter laugh. Tell you? Tell the perfect widow that her son was a failure? I couldn't. I couldn't disappoint your image of me too. So you decided to rob me. You decided to lie to me. You decided to wish for my death. I didn't wish for your death, he shouted. He really shouted. I heard quick footsteps. Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway, frightened. Ma'am, is everything okay? Yes, Martha, you can leave. Thank you. Martha looked at me unsure, but nodded and returned to the kitchen. Austin ran his hands through his hair. He was breathing heavily. When you heard that call, I was in shock. I had seen the news about the plane and I thought you were on it. It was horrible. And yes, I called Madison, but not because I wanted you dead. It was a reaction. A moment of weakness. You said, finally. You said the 18 million were yours, finally. That isn't shock, Austin. That is relief. He went silent. And then, when I came back alive, you fainted. Do you know what I thought in that moment? I thought it was because you were happy to see me, that it was emotion. But no. Right? You fainted from horror, from fear, because your plan had failed. There was no plan. Austin, you were drugging me. I took the bottle of pills out of my pocket and threw it on the coffee table. It bounced and fell to the floor. Clonazepam. In my room, in my tea. How many times did you drug me? How many times did you make me sign documents while I was confused? Austin looked at the bottle. He didn't deny it. I only wanted you to sleep better. You were stressed. Lie. My voice was cold now, without emotion. You wanted to confuse me. You wanted it to seem like I was losing my mind so that when you tried to commit me it would be easier, so the doctors would see a senile old woman taking pills and not remembering things. Austin let himself fall onto the sofa, buried his face in his hands, and started to cry. Not like the child who cried when he fell off his bike, not like the young man who cried at his father's funeral. He cried like someone who knows he has lost everything. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to get to this, but the debts, Madison, her family, everything spiraled out of control, and I didn't know how to get out. I approached him, sat in the chair opposite the sofa, and in that moment I felt something strange. Compassion. Not for what he had done, but for what he had become. A broken, weak man, trapped in his own lies. Austin, look at me. He raised his face. His eyes were red, his face wet. Do you know what hurts me most? It's not the money. It's not the properties. It's that you saw me as an obstacle, as something to get rid of. I gave you life. I raised you. I loved you with everything I had. And to you, I was just a foolish old woman standing in your way. No, Mom, I never. Yes, you did. I saw the messages. She's old. She doesn't understand. Those were your words. Austin closed his eyes. He couldn't even look at me. I'm sorry. Don't ask me for forgiveness, Austin, because I can't give it to you. Not now, maybe never. I stood up, walked to the window, looked outside. The city lights flickered in the distance. Yesterday I went to Bob Morris. I changed my will. Everything, absolutely everything that remains, is going to be donated to charities, orphanages, retirement homes for people without resources, anywhere the money can do the good your father would have wanted. I heard Austin stand up abruptly. What? No, you can't do that. I already did. I also revoked all the legal powers I gave you. You no longer have access to anything. The accounts, the properties, the investments, everything is frozen. And the Hamptons house, the one you mortgaged, it's already paid off with my money and is in a trust you can never touch. Austin stood motionless, processing. But I need that money. Madison's debts, the loans. I'm going to lose everything. Yes, you are going to lose everything. Just like I lost everything. The difference is that what I lost cannot be recovered. I lost my son. I lost trust. I lost years of my life believing in someone who was just using me. I turned toward him. And now I want you to leave. What? I want you to leave this house tonight. Pack your things and go. Mom, you can't be serious. This is my house too. No, this is the house your father bought with his money, with his effort, and left to me. You were just a temporary administrator, and that privilege is over. Austin took a step toward me. His face changed. It wasn't pain anymore. It was rage. This is your fault. What? Yes, yours. If you weren't so controlling, if you weren't so attached to Dad's money, if you had given me my share when you should have. Your share? My God, Austin, everything was your share. Half of everything, 18 million, properties. And it wasn't enough because greed is never enough. I deserved more. I was his son. I maintained the business. No, Austin, you ruined it. And then you robbed me to cover your failures. We stood face to face. Two strangers, two enemies. He wasn't my son anymore, and I wasn't his mother. We were just two people who had lost everything. If you don't leave tonight of your own will, I will call a lawyer tomorrow to start eviction proceedings. And believe me, With all the evidence I have, it won't take long. Austin clenched his jaw. You know what? I'm leaving. I'm leaving, and I hope I never see you again. The feeling is mutual. He went up the stairs, stomping. I heard drawers opening, things being thrown, curse words. I stayed in the living room, sitting with the rosary in my hands. Martha appeared again. Ma'am, is Mr. Austin really leaving? Yes, Martha. And are you okay? I looked at the rosary, the worn beads, the same ones my mother had prayed over so many times. I'm going to be okay. Eventually, half an hour later, Austin came down with 2 large suitcases. He stopped at the foot of the stairs. We looked at each other one last time. I waited. I don't know what I expected, an apology, remorse, some humanity, but what I saw in his eyes was only resentment. You're going to regret this. Austin, the one who is going to regret this is you. He walked to the door, opened it, stopped a second. Goodbye, Mom. I didn't answer. He closed the door and left. I heard his car start, the sound of the engine fading away, and then silence. A huge, empty, absolute silence. I stayed there, sitting in the living room where we had eaten dinner so many times, where I had watched my son grow, where I had laughed with Frank, where we had been a family, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in this whole nightmare. Because it's one thing to discover betrayal. It's another to lose your son. And even though he had done me so much harm, even though he had used me and lied and stolen, he was still my son. The baby I held in my arms, the boy who called me mommy and hugged me tight, the young man who cried when his father died, all that was lost, dead, as if he had really died on that plane. Martha sat next to me, hugged me without saying anything, just was there. And I let the crying come out, all the pain, all the rage, all the loss. I cried until I had no tears left. When I finally calmed down, Martha made me tea. This one I could drink without fear. Mrs. Miller, you did the right thing. Do you think so, Martha? Yes. Yes. Sometimes love also means letting go, even if it hurts. I nodded. I drank the tea slowly. It was hot, comforting. I looked at the clock. It was almost 11 p.m. Martha, you can go rest. I'm going to stay here a while longer. Are you sure? Yes. Thank you for everything. Martha went up to her room. I stayed in the living room, turned off the lights, left only the corner lamp on, and sat in the dark, thinking, remembering, making peace with everything I had lost. The house felt different now, emptier, but also more mine. There were no more lies, no more danger, no one waiting for me to die. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I got up, walked through the house, touched the walls, the furniture, the photographs. I stopped in front of a photo of Frank, Austin, and me, taken in the Hamptons. Austin was about 10. We were smiling, happy. Frank, I don't know if I did the right thing, but I did what I could. I hope wherever you are, you understand. I kissed my hand and touched the photograph. I went up to my room. For the first time in weeks, I didn't lock the door. There was nothing to fear. I lay down, looked at the ceiling, and thought, this is the end. It's over. Now I can start to heal. But I was wrong, because the end hadn't arrived yet, and karma was just starting its work. The following days were strange, silent, lonely, but also calm. I didn't have to pretend, didn't have to watch every word, didn't have to check my food. I could be myself. Bob Morris called me. Claire, Austin came to my office. He was furious. He threatened to sue, to contest the will. He said you were senile and that someone had manipulated you. And what did you tell him? That if he tried anything, we would present all the evidence of his fraud. The unauthorized withdrawals, the forged signatures, the life insurance, everything. I reminded him that fraud is a felony, that he could go to prison. And what did he say? He stayed silent and left. But Claire, be careful. Desperate people do unpredictable things. I know, but I'm not afraid anymore. I did what I had to do, and now everything is in the hands of the universe. I hung up the phone, looked out the window. The sky was gray. It looked like it was going to rain. And I thought of Austin. Where would he be? With Madison? In some hotel planning his next move? I didn't know. And part of me didn't even want to know. Because I had done my part. I had protected what was left of Frank's legacy. I had defended my dignity. I had closed the door, and now the only thing I could do was live with the peace of knowing that even though it hurt, even though I cried every night, even though I missed the boy who was once my son, I had done the right thing. And that would have to be enough. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you, what would you have done in my place? 3 weeks passed since Austin left the house. 3 weeks of silence. He didn't call, didn't write, didn't appear. It was as if he had never existed. At first, every time the phone rang, my heart raced. I thought, it's him. He's going to ask for forgiveness. He's going to say he repents. But it was never him. Over time, I stopped waiting. The house felt different now. Quieter, more orderly. Even the air seemed cleaner. Martha noticed the change. "Mrs. Miller, you look more serene." Serene? Yes, like a weight has been lifted. She was right. The weight of the lie, the weight of fear, the weight of pretending, all that had gone with Austin. And although it still hurt, although there were nights I cried in my room, although I missed the boy who would never return, I could breathe. One November morning I woke up early. The sun was coming through my bedroom window. It was cold. I got up, put on a robe, went down to the kitchen. Martha was already making coffee. The smell filled the whole house. "Good morning, ma'am." "Good morning, Martha." I ate breakfast slowly, a muffin, coffee with milk, some fruit. Simple things, but now I savored them truly, because I wasn't afraid my food was drugged. I didn't have to check every cup, every plate. I was free. After breakfast, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went out for a walk. I took my purse, my mother's rosary, and walked through the streets of Greenwich. There was a coffee shop on the corner, a small place with wooden tables and plants in the windows. I entered, ordered a coffee, sat by the window, and watched people pass. Mothers with strollers, students with backpacks, couples holding hands, seniors walking slowly. Life continued normal, beautiful, simple. And I was part of it. I wasn't the rich widow locked in her house. I wasn't the deceived mother. I wasn't the victim. I was just Claire, a 2-year-old woman drinking coffee, watching the world, and it was okay. While I drank my coffee, I thought of Austin. Where would he be? How would he be? Part of me wanted to know. Part of me didn't, because I knew that knowing would mean feeling, and I had felt enough. But the universe has strange ways of answering questions you didn't ask. That afternoon I received a call. It was Bob Morris. "Claire, I need to inform you of something. Austin filed a lawsuit. He wants to contest the will. He claims you were under undue influence, that someone manipulated you." I sighed. "And what do you need from me?" "Nothing for now. We have all the evidence. The documents, the investigators' recordings, the bank records. His lawsuit has no basis, but the process can be long. Months, maybe a year. It's fine. Do what you have to do. Aren't you worried?" "No, because I know the truth, and the truth always comes to light." I hung up the phone and felt something strange. Peace. Not anger, not fear, not anxiety, just peace. Because I had learned something important in these weeks. I couldn't control what Austin did. I couldn't control his decisions, his lies, his rage. But I could control how I responded. And I had decided to respond with dignity, without vengeance, without hate, without bitterness. Because if I let hate consume me, he would have won. The following days, I continued with my new routine. Morning walks, coffee at the shop, visits to church. I took up knitting again. I finished the sweater I had started for Austin. But when I finished it, I realized it made no sense to keep it. So one afternoon, while walking through the park, I saw a homeless man. He was sitting on a bench, shivering from the cold. I approached. "Excuse me, sir. I made this sweater. It's wool, very warm. Do you want it?" The man looked at me with watery eyes. "For me?" "Yes, for you." He took the sweater with trembling hands, put it on. It was a bit big, but it didn't matter. "God bless you, ma'am." "God bless you." I smiled. He already did. I walked back home feeling something warm in my chest. That sweater I had started with love for my son now warmed someone who really needed it, and somehow that made it more valuable. A week later, I decided to do something else. I called Bob Morris. "Bob, I want to start the donations. I don't want to wait until I die. I want to see them in action. Are you sure? Completely. How much can you donate without affecting your livelihood? We did calculations. With what was left after paying the Hamptons mortgage and other expenses, I had approximately $10 million. I decided to donate half, $5 million. I want $1 million to go to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Frank and I used to donate there every year. Perfect. Another $1 million for a women's shelter in New Haven. I kept listing, local food bank, scholarship fund for low-income students. Every donation had a purpose. Every $1 million was going to change lives. And do you want it done in your name? No. Anonymous. I don't need recognition. I just want the money to do good. As you say. I'll start the paperwork. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. The money for which Austin had lied, stolen, and betrayed. Now it was going to save lives, give opportunities, create hope, and he would never know. Because I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it because it was the right thing, because that money wasn't mine, it was Frank's, and I know this is what he would have wanted. 2 weeks after starting the donations, I received a letter. It was from the women's shelter. I opened it with trembling hands. Dear benefactor, we have no words to thank you for your generous donation. Thanks to your support, we can remodel the facilities, hire additional counselors, and provide medical care to all the women and children seeking refuge here. You have changed countless lives. These families now have a future. God bless you always. I cried reading that letter. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of healing, because for the first time in months, I felt that something good had come out of all this. I kept the letter in my nightstand drawer next to my mother's rosary. That night I prayed. I didn't pray for Austin. I didn't pray for him to return. I didn't pray for him to change. I prayed for him to find his own path, even if that path was far from me. I prayed for life, to teach him what I couldn't. And I prayed for me, to keep going, to heal, to live, because I had understood something important. Vengeance wasn't mine to take. Justice wasn't in my hands. Karma. Karma would do its work without me doing anything, without me intervening. I just had to live my life with dignity, with purpose, with peace, and let time do its thing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Martha and I found a routine. We cooked together, watched shows in the afternoon, laughed. I invited friends I had neglected for years, women my age who had also lost husbands, who had also faced betrayals, who had also learned to get up. We formed a prayer group. We met on Thursdays at my house, shared stories, prayed, supported each other, and slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. Not completely, because there are scars that never disappear, but enough to wake up every morning without fear, enough to smile for real, enough to understand that what I lost doesn't define me. One December afternoon I was in the garden. I had planted roses, something I always wanted to do but never had time for. I was watering them when I heard the doorbell. Martha went to open it. She returned with an envelope. "Ma'am, this arrived." It was a letter with no return address. I opened it. It was from Austin. For a moment, my heart accelerated, but I breathed deep. "You have no power over me anymore." I read the letter. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I regret everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment I made you feel less than you are. I am facing the consequences of my actions. Madison left me when she found out there was no more money. The creditors are chasing me. I lost the apartment. I lost everything. And I deserve it. You gave me love and I gave you pain. You gave me trust and I gave you betrayal. There are no words enough to apologize. I just want you to know that despite everything, you were the best mother I could have had, and I was the worst son. I am sorry with all my heart. Austin." I folded the letter, put it in my pocket, and felt nothing. Not rage, not satisfaction, not joy for his suffering. Just acceptance. Because this was what had to happen. The natural consequences of his actions. Karma collecting its debt. And I didn't have to do anything. Just live. Just heal. Just continue. I stayed in the garden looking at the roses. They were small still, but they were growing. Like me. Slowly. patiently, with dignity, and that was enough. That night, I took my mother's rosary, squeezed it between my hands, and whispered, "Thank you, for the strength, for the clarity, for the peace." Because I had learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating the other, it's finding oneself. And I had found myself. Broken, yes. Scarred, yes. Hurting, yes. But also stronger, wiser, freer, and ready for what came next. Because I knew life would continue. That there would be more days, more challenges, more pains, but also more joys, more love, more purpose. And I would be ready, because I had survived the worst. And now, I could live the best. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And you, what would you have done in my place? 6 months passed since Austin's letter. 6 months of silence, of peace, of reconstruction. I had learned to live with the absence, with the void left by a son who leaves or gets lost. Because Austin hadn't died. But the son I knew, that one had died. And I had learned to make peace with that. My days now had a new rhythm. Mornings in the garden caring for my roses, afternoons with my prayer group, Fridays visiting the shelter where I had donated, seeing those families rebuild. That filled a space in my heart I thought would never heal. One of the counselors told me something I will never forget. "Mrs. Miller, you are an angel for these people. You gave them a future." I just smiled. They gave me a purpose. And it was true. The money for which Austin had betrayed everything was now building lives, feeding hopes, curing wounds. It was ironic and beautiful. And just one afternoon in May, I was in the coffee shop as always, reading a book, drinking my coffee. Martha was at home preparing dinner for the prayer group that night. Then I saw him, Austin. He was walking on the sidewalk across the street, alone, with wrinkled clothes, hair unkempt, shoulders slumped. He wasn't the man who had left my house months ago, proud, angry, resentful. He was a shadow. My first instinct was to hide, turn away, pretend I hadn't seen him. But I didn't. I stayed still, watching. He entered a convenience store. Bought something small, bread maybe, came out, kept walking. He walked like someone who has nowhere to go, without rush, without direction. And in that moment I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't joy seeing him like this. It wasn't that feeling of "you deserve it" that sometimes arises when we see those who hurt us fall. It was just pity. Because despite everything he had done to me, he was still the boy I once held in my arms. And seeing him like this, lost, broken, alone, it hurt. I didn't call his name. I didn't cross the street. I didn't do anything, because I had learned that sometimes love is also letting go, letting everyone face their own consequences, letting life teach what we couldn't. I finished my coffee, paid, left, and went home. That night, during the prayer meeting, one of my friends, Margaret, shared something. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness, about how to forgive someone who did us a lot of harm. And I realized something. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean reconciling. Forgiving means letting go, letting the weight of resentment go so that we can live in peace. Her words resonated with me. That night in my room, I took my mother's rosary and prayed for Austin, not for him to return, not for him to ask forgiveness, not for things to be different. I prayed for him to find his path, his own peace, his own redemption, because I had already found mine. 2 weeks later, I received another call. It was a woman. Her voice sounded young, nervous. "Mrs. Miller?" "Yes." "Who is speaking?" "My name is Ashley. I am. Well, I was Austin's girlfriend before Madison." My heart accelerated. "What do you need, Ashley?" "I need to speak with you. It's about Austin. He is very bad." I closed my eyes. "What happened? Can we meet?" "I prefer you tell me in person." I accepted. We agreed to meet the next day at a cafe near my house. Ashley was a woman of about 30, pretty, with sad eyes. We sat down. She ordered tea. I ordered coffee. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Mrs. Miller. I know you don't know me, and that probably the last thing you want is to hear about Austin. What happened?" Ashley took a deep breath. "Austin and I dated 5 years ago. We loved each other. Or at least I loved him. But he was always obsessed with money, with appearances, with being someone important. We broke up because I didn't fit that image he wanted to project. I nodded. It didn't surprise me. A month ago, I ran into him. He was unrecognizable, thin, dirty, living in a cheap motel room. Debts follow him. Madison not only left him, but took everything she could before leaving. She sued him for breach of promise. She won. Austin had to sell everything. The car, the jewelry, everything. And his job? He doesn't have one. He was fired from 2 companies for embezzlement. No one wants to hire him. His reputation is destroyed. Ashley took out a tissue, wiped her eyes. But that isn't the worst, Mrs. Miller. What else? 2 weeks ago, he collapsed on the street. They took him to the hospital. He has a bleeding ulcer, severe anxiety. The doctors said his body is paying the consequences of years of pressure and bad decisions. I felt a knot in my stomach. Where is he now? In Greenwich Hospital, but in the charity ward. I visit him when I can, but he is alone, completely alone. Madison never appeared. His friends, the ones he had when there was money, disappeared. I am the only one who goes to see him. Why are you telling me this, Ashley? She looked at me with sincere eyes. Because despite everything he did, despite how he betrayed you, he is still your son, and he is repentant, truly repentant. He doesn't expect anything from you. But I thought you should know. We stayed in silence. Did he ask you to call me? No. In fact, he forbade me to do it. He said you had already suffered enough because of him, that he didn't deserve your forgiveness or your compassion. Then why did you do it? Ashley smiled sadly. Because I believe in second chances. Not for you to be mother and son like before. I know that's not possible anymore. But for what? So that at least he can have peace. Both of you. I thanked her. Paid for the coffees. We said goodbye. I walked home slowly. My mind was a whirlwind. Part of me wanted to ignore everything Ashley had told me. Part of me thought, he deserves it. Let him face the consequences alone. But another part remembered the 10-year-old boy in the Hamptons, smiling, playing, asking for a hug. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, thinking, praying. What do I do? Frank, what would you do? And then I remembered something Frank told me once years ago, when a partner betrayed him in business. Claire, justice isn't vengeance. Justice is letting natural consequences unfold. But compassion. Compassion is remembering that we are all human. We all fail. We all deserve a chance to get up, even if it is to fall again. The next morning I called Martha. Martha, I need you to accompany me somewhere. Where, ma'am? To the hospital. Martha looked at me surprised, but asked nothing. She just nodded. We drove in silence. My heart beat strong. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what I was going to feel. I just knew I had to go. We arrived at the hospital. It was a big place, busy. I asked for Austin Miller. A nurse directed us to the 3rd floor, general medicine. Martha stayed in the waiting room. I went up alone. I walked down the hallway. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of monitors, distant voices. I found his room, room 312. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I opened slowly, and I saw him. Austin was lying in the bed, connected to IVs, asleep. He looked old, much older than a 5-year-old man should look. His face was pale, gaunt, deep circles under his eyes, gray hair at the temples. I approached slowly. I sat in the chair next to the bed and observed him. This man who was once my baby, my boy, my hope. This man who betrayed me, who wished for my death, who robbed me. This man who was now alone, sick, broken. And I felt peace, not satisfaction, not joy for his suffering, just peace, because life had done its work. The consequences had arrived, natural, inevitable, just. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to take revenge. I didn't have to chase him. Karma. Karma had collected its debt. Austin opened his eyes slowly. He saw me and froze. Mom. His voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Austin. He tried to sit up, but a pang of pain stopped him. No, You shouldn't be here. Ashley called you, didn't she? I told her not to. She is worried about you. She is a good woman. I don't deserve her worry. I don't deserve anything. We stayed in silence. The monitor marked his heart rate. Beep, beep, beep. How are you? Austin let out a bitter laugh. How am I? Ruined, sick, alone. Everything I touched turned to ashes. I lost the money. I lost Madison. I lost my reputation. I lost you. Yes. My answer was simple, direct. I didn't come here to tell you everything is fine. It's not fine. It probably never will be. I came because Ashley told me you were here, and despite everything, despite every lie, every betrayal, every pain you caused me, you are still my son. Austin started to cry. I'm so sorry, Mom. If I could turn back time, if I could change everything. But you can't. None of us can. We can only live with our decisions. I took something out of my purse. An envelope. What is that? It's enough money to pay your hospital bills, so you have a place to live when you get out, so you can eat, so you can start over. Austin looked at me with incredulous eyes. I can't accept that. It's not a gift, Austin. It's a last chance. The only one I'm going to give you. I put the envelope on the table next to his bed. But I want you to understand something. This doesn't mean everything is forgiven. It doesn't mean we are going to go back to being mother and son like before. That died. What we had no longer exists. I know. This means I am giving you the opportunity to get up. To be better. To learn. Not for me. For you. I stood up. I wish you the best, Austin, truly. I hope you find your path, that you find peace, that you find redemption. Mom. Wait. I stopped at the door. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I am so sorry for failing you. I know. But now you have to live with that. And learn to forgive yourself. Because I already made peace with all this. I left the room. I walked down the hallway without looking back. I went down the stairs, found Martha. Are you okay, ma'am? Yes, Martha, I'm okay. And it was true, because I had closed the cycle. Not with reconciliation, not with complete forgiveness, not with a movie ending, but with acceptance, with dignity, with human compassion. I had given him a chance, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to do it for my own peace. What he did with that chance was no longer my responsibility. We drove back home. The sun was shining, the sky blue, the streets full of life. Martha looked at me sideways. You did the right thing, ma'am. You think? Yes, because you didn't let hate consume you. And that makes you great. I smiled. We arrived home. I entered. The smell of garden flowers filled the air. I sat in the living room. The same room where I heard Austin celebrate my death. The same room where I confronted him. The same room where he said goodbye with resentment. But I didn't feel pain in that space anymore. I felt peace. Because I had learned something fundamental. Karma is not vengeance, it is consequence. And the consequences had already arrived. Austin had lost everything. Not because I cursed him, not because I chased him, but because his own actions created his own ruin. Greed blinded him, lies isolated him, betrayal destroyed him, and now he was alone in a hospital. Without money, without love, without anything, except a chance. A small, fragile chance to be better. And I had given him that chance not because he deserved it, but because I needed to let go. I needed to close that chapter with dignity. I needed to prove to myself that despite the pain, despite the betrayal, despite everything, I was still who my mother taught me to be. A woman of faith, of values, of compassion. That night in my room, I looked at my mother's rosary for the last time in this story and whispered, Mom, I did it. I survived. I fell. I broke. I cried. But I got up. And now I can live in peace. I kept the rosary in its little box. I didn't need to squeeze it every night anymore. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't carry resentment anymore. I wasn't tied to the past anymore. I was free. And freedom. Freedom was the best gift I could give myself. 2 years have passed since that day at the hospital. 2 years of peace, of healing, of learning. I didn't see Austin again. I don't know what he did with the opportunity I gave him. If he took advantage of it, if he changed, if he learned, and it's okay not to know, because his path is no longer my responsibility. My path is mine, and I have walked it with dignity. Today I am 64 years old. My hair has more gray, my face more wrinkles, my hands more age spots. But my heart is at peace. The roses in my garden grew. Now they fill the whole patio with their perfume. The prayer group keeps meeting every Thursday. We are 12 women now, all with stories, all with scars, all healing together. The donations I made changed lives. Families have a future. The elderly have dignity. Women have hope. And I have purpose. I learned something important in these years. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us most. And it's okay to walk away. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to protect yourself. Love doesn't mean being a martyr. Love is also respecting oneself. I also learned that justice doesn't always arrive how we expect it. But it always arrives. The consequences of our actions find us sooner or later, one way or another. And that peace is not found in vengeance. It is found in letting go, in healing, in living. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a different woman, stronger, wiser, freer. A woman who survived betrayal, who faced pain, who chose dignity over hate. And that is something I am proud of. My mother's rosary is now carried by one of the women in my prayer group, a woman who is facing her own betrayal, her own battle. I gave it to her saying the same thing my mother told me. When things get difficult, pray, not for miracles, pray for strength. Because strength is the only thing we really need. The strength to get up, to continue, to heal. If you are listening to this story and are going through something similar, I want you to know something. You are not alone. The pain you feel is real. Betrayal hurts, loss hurts, but you are also stronger than you think, and you can survive this, like I survived, with dignity, with faith, with hope, because life continues, and you deserve to live it in peace. If my story helps a single woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. God bless you. May you find your path, may you heal your wounds, and may you never lose your dignity, because that is the only thing no one can take from you. I am Claire Miller. I am 64 years old, and this is my story. A story of pain and rebirth. Thank you for listening until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and hit the bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman, a life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. God bless you, and until next time, M.